Hey, Blair and Kewal, thank you for coming in. You both have really tremendous, outstanding backgrounds in transformation and using technology and then leadership. And you're embarking on a remarkable sort of initiative right now. So we want to get into that today. But I encourage the audience to actually take a look at your profiles, which are published with every interview, because your backgrounds are very deep and very extensive. So now we'll get into both of you, but if I can just get you to do a quick snapshot, keep it under 1 minute. First of all, Kewal, what are 1 minute's worth of introduction of who you are, and then we'll go to Blair.
Introduction about myself. I mean, I tend try not to market too much about myself, but been fortunate. Serendipity has put me in places where I've been able to learn a lot. IT was not my number one choice for a career. Business and entrepreneurship was. I ended up working for Lloyd's of London, trying to automate their systems back in the 1970s, moving them from machine-based cards-based financial systems to a full transactions processing environment. So that's my first sort of foray into the IT industry. Ever since then, I've been lucky to keep up to date with all the technology changes and the jobs and the different types of careers that people have had. My role as president of KIPS allowed me to connect with a lot of professionals across the country. My role as president of ICCP, the Institute for Certification of Computing Professionals, one of the founders of which was ACM and the other was IEEE, also allowed me to then have an international network of professionals. And I've used that to develop well over $100 million of income for my former technical college and try to help as many people improve in their career in the IT industry. And of course, I'm a late bloomer, and so I kept studying, doing lifelong learning, going through my master's while I had kids and teaching while I was working at the college, and then later on PhD when I was at Athabasca University. So these are just me, I guess, in many ways, taking advantage of new opportunities as they came along. The latest one, of course, is authoring this book with Blair, who I've known since 1982. Or around 81, actually. And so it's a pleasure to be in conversation with you, Stephen, who I've met many, many years ago when we sit and had coffee about 3 a.m. in the morning somewhere on the hotels across Canada. That's me.
So, Kewal, thank you for that introduction. And I should mention that many in the audience may not know who KIPS is. That's it used to be called the Canadian Information Processing Society, but now it's just sort of the acronym. It's the oldest and really the founding government-chartered national IT association in the country of Canada, but with a global footprint. KIPS is a founder of IFIP, an international federation, had many MOUs with things like the ACM or IEEE, as a founder of many global initiatives and so on. And Kewal, because you're a past president, you've been involved in some of that activity as well. So, okay, Blair, let's go to you now, and maybe a quick synopsis of the highlights of what you've done and what you hope to do.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been developing enterprise systems right back to 1982 when I first graduated, and that's actually where Kewal and I first met. Kewal was actually an instructor at a college where I was. So anyhow, so that's where we first met. But I got involved in, creating, business systems. I call them enterprise systems. It's like financial, administrative systems that are connected, with operational systems. And in 1984, I started my own company, which continues to operate today. I think that one of the things that is a bit unique about me is, over that 40 years, I've pretty much always been involved in the technology. I've always been involved in architecting these enterprise systems, these financial administrative systems for organizations. I get involved right down to the database level in terms of working with them. And it's something that I've become, really passionate about over the years. It's something that I've just, just had this deep passion in terms of, with our industry, in terms of actually making a change in the industry, in terms of helping to improve the way that we create enterprise systems. So a good example of a system that we just recently, we created was for the Chartered Professional Accountants Association. So it's a financial administrative system that touches all corners of their organization. And, we pulled it all together into this central integrated system. So in terms of what led me into this journey, it was really, I got involved in, probably the biggest one was I got involved with an oil and gas company, and we went in there and it was a bit of a sabbatical for me to move away from actually creating systems, but we went in there and we helped them find missed revenues. And my job was to connect all this data together in this organization and connect the dots, with the production accountant expert. And we ended up finding $7.5 million that they missed in billing. And to me, that was just shocking. It's just like, we need to do better as an industry. And they were paying a lot for their systems, but the systems were not connected. And so that was really the trigger point for me that got me involved in looking at new ways to create enterprise systems so they have an inherent capability to exchange data.
So I could see, this sort of confluence between you two, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, Kewal was originally an instructor,
Yeah.
and really your professor, and then you ended up being partners and working together for decades and so on. But you both have that sort of abiding interest in the enterprise and the challenges in the enterprise, the integration of data within the enterprise. It's all these silos, and how do you get some kind of cohesion when you're working in the enterprise environment. Now, you both are responsible for this book. So I'll start with you, Blair, this time. What was the genesis for this book? And then did you approach Kewal, or was it Kewal approached you, or you just somehow came together at the same time?
Sure. Well, where that started off was, I was really looking at, what kind of education do we have out there for students to learn how to create enterprise systems. And so I contacted, Kewal by LinkedIn, and I hadn't talked to him for, many years. And I just said, Kewal, there just doesn't seem to be education out there, that teaches students how to create an enterprise system, and really these financial administrative systems sit in the middle of every organization that's out there. Yet a lot of the education in terms of how those systems are structured, how the data is structured for them, is really the only ones that are providing that education is like the ERP vendors themselves. And I felt that we need general education. So that was really the first connection that Kewal and I had, in this journey. And it was really, I expressed this goal of, coming up with a new way to create enterprise systems that have this inherent capability to exchange data, and then educating students in terms of how to, take on this methodology and this platform. And so Kewal was a big believer right from the beginning, and it was so critical to me, to have his support through this entire process, because it's been, this was back in 2017, so it's been a bit of a journey for us to get to the point of writing the book. So. Yeah.
So Kewal, Blair approaches you about this book, and you say, "Hey, I get it," because you've been involved in this area for so long. And then how did that result in the combining of both of your experiences? Did you sort of co-write a draft and then just continue to iterate it? What was that process to get this completed book product? And then let's talk about the value proposition of that book as well, right? So.
Sure. Well, let's go back a little bit. Blair approached me because I think he wasn't getting enough attention to his ideas. So first of all, he proposed the ideas and he showed me some of his ideas. And when I looked through them, because of the history of having developed applications for so many years, I mean, I've had my own private company running along with my teaching practice since 1980. So it's not something that was new for me in terms of looking at application development. And I help a lot of innovative startups do application development, especially with my fourth year students doing projects for startup companies. So we've been always involved with new technologies and new methods and new business ideas. When Blair showed me or asked me to look at his postings on LinkedIn, that sort of got me thinking about what is different about what we've been doing repetitively and failing to do repetitively for the last 50 years in our software application development industry. And so having had all those practical experiences of redoing stuff over and over and over again, creating new contact databases, creating new standard databases that needed to be just standard practice that we can just pull out of a storage and reuse again. And for a while there, I was working also in Toronto with a Paul Bassett and his company called Netron, where he had written a book on framing software reuse with the malleable frameworks for building software. And I'd help them to put Java into their software reuse engines. They were fundamentally in the COBOL space. So, given all that history of application development, when I looked at Blair's ideas, they really struck a big chord with me in terms of, hey, this is the right way to do things. We need to put in the effort up front. Now, I had written a number of books, one of which was The Complete Guide to Professional Computing. Another one was Certified Data Management Professional Examinations Guide, and so on and so forth. And I've worked with a lot of online courses and developing and teaching executive MBAs at Athabasca University, as well as Master of Science students and PhD students. So with all of that background, I realized that what we've been doing in the education field is teaching silo development. And this book and the ideas that Blair was fostering said, let's think integration first. Let's look at data integration first. And since we're in the data being the fifth element today, along with fire, water, earth, and air, data is the critical element that needs to be integrated before we can have useful applications built. So that's really what led us to think about writing the book. For the first 3 or 4 years, we tried to get a lot of interest from professionals, experts, fathers of data warehousing, such as Bill Inman, people like Len Silverstone, who had written about universal data models, and other big-time authors to get their interest in what we were doing. So that's really what sparked up eventually to us writing the book.
So you've written this book now, both of you, Blair and Kewal. And so what's your strategy of getting the book out and getting it embedded into enterprises, getting it into the educational systems and so on? And do you have collateral? And I'll go to Blair. Do you have collateral to support that journey so that it can be embedded in different communities? So how accessible is the book? How accessible is it to the education system and to enterprises?
Yeah, I think that in terms of the accessibility of it, we've really tried to do, like a holistic job of the material that the book covers. And so what we've done is, we started with, started with publishing articles on LinkedIn and, really challenging the experts and soliciting feedback to come up with these 5 key principles that I believe are necessary for, so that we can create systems that integrate. And then it says, okay, well, we need to be able to create the software to accomplish this, because, this is not just about, like a vaporware thing. It's really about flushing out the principles, and then, creating software to prove that the capabilities or that this is possible. And that became the material that made it possible to write the book and have confidence that, what, the book was speaking about was actually going to be possible. Then we went to the next step of actually creating a massive proof of concept environment, which showed these networking all these different systems together and having them exchange data, and actually showing that this is possible, and taking data from many different systems and automatically aggregating it. Then developed videos, put together a website. And so now it's really just getting the message out. And, when we really, appreciate, things like this, in interviews like this, you've had a lot of esteemed people that you've interviewed over the years, and we're glad to be included in this collection. But it's really publishing posts on LinkedIn. It is doing speaking at conferences, and really just getting the word out. So that would be the.
Yeah, I think if I can add to that, Stephen, we've tried to also connect with the ACM, IEEE, AIS, the Association of Information Systems, model curriculum development committees. And I've tried to, I've been using those model curricula for my program improvement since the 1980s. And so we're really trying to get those bodies to look at teaching education differently, and using a data and integration and thinking data integration first. So that's sort of part of where we're going with this. The bulk of the work on writing this book was done by Blair, and with additional input from myself. So that really is the key to the technology side of the business. The technology side of all the concepts comes out of Blair. I'm more of the education and business focused editing on top of that. If we look at business strategy and systems or IT strategy that has to align with business strategy, IT today contributes up to 30% of the bottom line profit generation within a company. The budget may be 2% of the total operating budget of a company, but the profit benefit of systems is up to 30% contribution to that bottom line. And if we look at supply chains, during my research in supply chain collaboration, we know that information sharing and collaborative decision-making speed up the company. They make sure that there are lower costs for doing business. And ultimately, if you don't share information, if you don't have integrated systems, you end up with much, much higher cost. And so that's part of why I think this approach to integration first is so critical for us to focus on. It will help companies compete. It will help companies speed up their operation, and it will make them survive the upcoming massive, massive change that our business and industries are facing.
So, that's really valuable. So, Blair, you've got source code published on GitHub. You've got a website where you're detailing the documents and the training videos and so on. Yeah. But earlier you talked about 5 principles or a number of principles. Can you sort of summarize those principles?
Right. It's, just to step back a little bit, if we want to be able to create, these systems, so that they have this inherent capability to communicate, then we do need to really overall rethink how these systems get created. So the principles are really around, first of all, it's called core models. And it really says, when you look across all the different organizations, you're going to find that there's data that exists in every one of the, in every one of those organizations that they need to manage. And so it's things like contacts, finances, assets, activities, contracts. And there's this data that exists in every organization. So it's really saying, okay, we need to create systems based on these refined core models that have this built-in capability to be expanded to meet the unique needs of any business unit or organization. And it's really already ERP vendors are doing that. I mean, they're not changing those core structures when they go into an organization, but these core structures are more powerful than the ones that you would see in the ERP vendors because they have this inherent capability to exchange data. The next key principle is primary keys, and a primary key is basically identifies data, and it's this unique identifier. And we need to be able to create these primary keys in a way that we assign it to data and never have it change, no matter how many different systems we move that data to, or when we move it to aggregate it in a data warehouse, we never have it change. And those are principles that we don't have right now. In fact, developers can choose whatever primary key method they want when they create a system, and then we move data to another system, or we try to aggregate this data, and every the same record will have a different identifier in every system. So that's another key principle. Another one is what we call record governance, and it says, hey, if we've got the same data that exists in 20 different systems, then which system do we trust? Which system has the trusted version of that data? So it'd be like if there was an oil and gas, well, and that well was owned by a company, and then they sell that oil and gas well to another company. Well, now that company has the trusted data for that oil and gas well. And so this ownership can move from one organization to the other. And that's really critical when you start to aggregate data. The next one is around data exchange. And it says, hey, we need a way to create systems so that they can automatically exchange data. So that means we need to be able to identify these groups of data that need to be shared, across systems. We need to be able to identify systems or subscribers that are interested in this data, like groups of subscribers. And then we need to be able to automatically broadcast that data to all those different systems. And we also need a way to rebroadcast it if something about that data changes. So that's the fourth principle. The fifth one is really around what we call application frameworks. And the application framework controls the user interface for a system. And so whenever a system gets created, this application framework is built to, control user authentication and what menu options and how they search and browse and edit data. And so in today's environment, we recreate that application framework with every system that gets created. So if we've created 1 million systems, 1 million times we create an application framework. And so the application framework principle is really around creating an application framework that operates like a web browser. So we fully parameterize the systems, and then and there's all kinds of benefits that you see as a result of creating this with these systems with an application framework that is very similar to a web browser. So those would be the 5.
No,
Yeah, and if I can, Stephen, if I can add to that, I think when the approach that we're advocating is a holistic approach to leapfrog the current ERP systems. Remember, the ERP systems are based on thinking out of the 1970s, and it's still based on silo development. Their ERP systems, essentially silos, even their own ERP systems don't talk to their other ERP systems installed in another company or a subdivision of one company. So they have a lot of data exchange issues, and people end up creating middleware or some kind of a central database with new keys to sort of integrate the data. So there's a lot of rework that gets done. So that's one issue. Secondly, when companies want to move from their current systems to new systems, every company wants to have a low-risk incremental approach. And what we're advocating is an approach where they can start off with one small system and incrementally change the systems over time. So the idea here is not that we are going to wholesale replace anything, because obviously that involves a lot of risk, but we're advocating an approach that allows you to incrementally change your systems over time, regardless of whether you're into a full-fledged ERP system today or not. Even a small company today could start off utilizing this system as their back office and move into that environment using the methods that we're advocating. So again, it's IT companies and CIOs and CEOs are risk averse when it comes to anything affecting their bottom line revenue. And the approaches that we're advocating allow them to take a low risk, incremental approach to building systems that actually untie them from the way that they're tied into the ERP vendors and or even the cloud vendors. So they can begin to control their own destiny and their own data in a longitudinal approach, and then incrementally build in their supply chain partners or their subdivisions into that whole integrated whole. Any comments from you, Blair, on that?
Yeah, I think that's that's pretty accurate. It's really, our industry is unique from any other industry that you see out there. We have a little analogy with, building houses, right? Where, when you build a house, the house has, there's a building code that everybody has to follow when that house gets created. And that really helps us to create, houses cheaper. It helps all the trades to work together more effectively. But, if we had no building codes when we created houses, you can imagine the chaos in terms of trying to even connect houses into municipal systems. And with software, that's exactly where our industry is at. We give teams a list of requirements, and then we basically have them go create a system, and they do it however they want, using they might have some local standards, but there's no global standards for, in terms of how that system gets created. We implement that system, and then we try to integrate it with all the other systems, and we can't. In fact, we spend 80% of our effort just trying to do, for AI, for cleansing data. So it's really stepping back and working more as a team. And we hope that this is the first step for our industry to start to create systems that we can network together like this. So,
Blair, then I'm curious what the onboarding process looks like. So let's say you have an enterprise and they buy your book and they look at your code and GitHub and they look through the training videos. How long does it take them to start implementing this new sort of paradigm, this interconnection that you're mentioning? And so in essence, standardizing this process, right? And this data aggregation. How long does that take? Does it take months or weeks or days?
Oh, it's going to be, it'll be a lengthy process. So there's no, denying that. I mean, this is a paradigm shift for our industry. But the vision is that we will see developers and architects that will gain certifications very similar to what you see with like CPA certifications, and they will be certified in terms of how to look at organizations differently and look at the systems. And they will have this, they will have access to all the open source code that we've created. They'll begin creating new modules that, that can plug into that. And, AI is going to play a really important part in the creation of these new systems. And the way that like some people have this vision that, well, geez, with AI, we could just go and create an enterprise system. But that would only just give us a lot more systems that can't talk together. And so if we could take AI and then base it on a model like that we've created, then you could, basically take in system definitions and, you know, database definitions, and suck that into the model and generate, you know, new systems that have this inherent capability to connect together and exchange data, so that we could produce systems, you know, much, much faster. And so it's going to be a, you know, there's no two ways about it. It's going to be a process, but eventually, you know, our systems don't last forever. You know, we don't put systems in and have them be in existing, you know, 30 years from now. There's a process of replacing those systems. So this is going to be a part of that replacement process. And the hope would be, you know, are we really going to create, you know, when they replace another system, are we really going to replace it with another silo system? Or are we going to start looking at, you know, a new methodology and a new approach to systems that lets us interconnect systems? And the other really, I think, important point is we've hit the wall in terms of how big our systems can get with our current siloed approach. You know, so if you took a look and you said, you know, you took a look at something like a government, and that government had many departments and commissions and boards, and let's say it encompassed healthcare with hospitals and cancer clinics and education entities. With our current approach, we can't create a bunch of silo systems for those and try to have them all connect together, because our methodologies don't support that. And we can't put it into a monolithic system, because it's only so big those systems can get before they implode in their own complexity. So this approach would allow us to create systems by business unit that are tailored to their unique needs, that exchange data with every other business unit and are able to so we can enter data once and never have to enter it again, and we can aggregate data automatically from all the systems into a data warehouse for reporting. So that's kind of the, you know, that's the problem we're solving, and that's the vision for, you know, what this could be. So it is a lengthy vision, though.
So yeah, let me Stephen, let me try and put it into context, or longer term context. You know, we've looked at James Martin, information engineering. We've looked at Ed Jordan, structured programming. We've looked at, you know, historically, we've gone through these cycles of what I call small changes, you know, joint application development. You know, we looked at, you know, things like universal data models from Len Silverstone and David Hay with their publications. You look at Bill Inman and others in data warehousing, and all of these are fragmented approaches. None of them looks at integration first. And historically, we've built silo systems. We teach silo systems in the universities and colleges. Every course takes its own different approach to building a system. And whether you're teaching C++ or Python or whatever, everything is a silo. Even in AI today, in machine learning, we build silo systems. And part of the reason we do that is that we teach it that way in the colleges, and every professor teaches it in that method. This approach that we're advocating, as Blair says, is, we feel, the next step. We want to add in ISO 9000 style certification at the end of it. We expect to have generally accepted data management principles, much like the generally accepted accounting principles in the accounting industry. We expect to have generally accepted application development principles at the end of it all. And I'm working with the ICCP, the Institute for Certification of Computing Professionals, along with data management professionals, and along with ACM and IEEE, to advocate for these kinds of models. Now, our ultimate goal is to have systems built on time and within budget. And we can only do that if we automate a lot of the tasks. So when Blair talks about an application framework, the idea is that we just capture requirements, and we can pop out the entire system just by capturing requirements, and not have to have every single programmer build a unique, custom, craft kind of a system that only they are fully cognizant of. So that's where we're aiming, and it is a long-term goal. It may happen after we're well dead and gone. I don't know. we'll see, because the IT departments are loath to change because they've invested so much money in the current systems and the manpower and the technical skills that manpower has in order to carry on providing the system that they have today. So yeah, we see it as a really long-term issue, but we do want to leave this legacy for our industry that gets us beyond silo development and into real, what I call mass production of software.
But but there's cloud providers who provide tools and things like that, and a lot of developers use those tools. So you're on GitHub, which is great, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of developers go to GitHub. But are you then talking to the Azure folks at Microsoft or the Amazon Web Services folks and some of the others that are out there? Are you also talking to the IT services companies like Avanade or Accenture, Infosys, Tata, et cetera, because really, if you want to scale this thing, then you got to get some penetration with them folks, right? Or am I
right? Yeah. And I guess, we are definitely in the infancy of the, from a communication perspective of, getting the right groups involved to, to help support this initiative. So this, I will say though, that this is really about empowering a new generation of architects and developers so that they can go in and work together as a team to create enterprise systems and that have this inherent capability to communicate. And then organizations can really take back control of their enterprise systems and not be, held to any one vendor, to do that. They can basically have their own teams to accomplish that, and they could hire expert teams to come in. But we see that there will be a tremendous amount more of sharing of ideas, and so this platform provides that. And really, it will also hopefully get the industry thinking. We cannot create systems in silos and then try to integrate them. It just doesn't work. It's like no matter until we deal with the core issue of how we create systems, we are always going to struggle with integration, and we're always going to struggle with aggregating data. So those are two kind of key things. So
yeah, so let me add, Stephen. I mean, very good question that you asked. What have you done about getting this out to the major players in the industry? We haven't done a lot. As Blair says, we're at very baby steps at this point. It really needs some kind of an investment, like an OpenAI investment, to foster this kind of a future evolution of our industry. What we've done so far is just made sure that the ideas that we have and the concepts that we're striving for fit that future need. And so it's a model that we think supersedes, allows you to leapfrog, allows you independence. When you put your data up with the cloud vendors, they own the data. You typically don't own the data. We've talked to Snowflake, we've talked to a few others, looked at where we can potentially add what we're doing as front-end applications to their environments. It's not quite the right fit where we think we're headed. It may be, it's just that, right, maybe it's our thinking that hasn't matured enough to think that we can work with those organizations in the way that they can benefit and they can bring it to the bigger mid-business market. So I think we want to make sure that companies are empowered to be individually owning and their own future in their business backend systems and not be beholden to vendors. So yeah, we're going against the tide of SAP and Dynamics and Oracle and PeopleSoft and all the big players. Yeah, we're hitting a big wave against us, absolutely.
Yeah,
but we're going to crash through that. It's like riding the wave on a board. We will learn how to navigate that.
So do you have any sort of pilots or POCs out there that people are willing to play with this in a sandbox? I mean, I could see the government. I mean, the Canadian government is such a huge repository, all these different data silos, right? Or provincial governments or even municipal. And that would maybe be lower hanging fruit. Do you have anybody willing to just try it, test it, do some implementations of this?
Well, I think that's this again, being in the infancy, we don't, and that's what part of this communication process, in terms of, reaching out to, like, there's government groups within LinkedIn that we're posting with, and so we are still looking for that, for somebody that really just says that catches the idea that, hey, a government, especially because government relies on a lot of custom systems to support their programs, to support things like land registries and vehicle registries that are not just off the shelf software. And so, it was they are actually kind of ripe for this concept, and we're looking for someone that just steps back and says, hey, we need to check out this approach. Every year there's $1 trillion that is spent on enterprise software, and certainly we can invest something in trying to come up with something that effectively revolutionizes or truly changes how we create software, so that we can see that the merit of the approach, and to flush it out and to get other experts involved. So really that is the hope, is that somebody's going to say, this is crazy. We can't create systems in silos and try to integrate them. It doesn't work. It's never worked. It's never going to work. And so let's think broader. So that's the hope, is that we can catch somebody that also sees the same issue. And I guess Kewal, was the kind of the first one I talked to, many years ago, and we've gained believers along the way. So there are people, there's people that are open to the fact that the way we're doing it isn't working. So,
well, that's really, really remarkable, all of the different facets that you've been discussing. I can see how this is so transformational. If I can get both of you to provide your final recommendations to the audience. And by the way, you should name the book as well.
Okay, I could start. So the name of the book is Breaking Bad with 3D Enterprise Systems, and it's really breaking, I guess, the bad habits that we've had with creating enterprise systems, and coming up with a more holistic approach. My closing thoughts, maybe recommendations would be, first of all, take a look at the way that we create systems. We've been doing it the same way since the inception of systems. We give a team a list of requirements, they create it in a silo, and then we try to integrate it, and we can't. And no amount of tools and methodologies and anything is going to fix that problem. We have a foundation of sand that we are trying to work with. And so as an industry, we need to step back and to look at ways to achieve. We need to begin with the end in mind. So we need to be able to create systems in order to achieve today's needs for integration and today's needs for data aggregation. And we hope that this book and the methodologies and the website and the GitHub will be an impetus for experts in the industry to step back and take a look and consider an idea like this, and hopefully help contribute to making this happen and making our industry more efficient and effective.
And then Kewal.
So from my side, it's always about business value. What's the business value that we're bringing to the table? The book Breaking Bad with 3D Enterprise Systems is our attempt to break habits and to give us new habits that will allow us to have faster companies, better data sharing, easier information sharing, reduced amount of rework. A mass production of software should have been happening just like the car industry or just like steel industry, doesn't matter what you look at, or robotics manufacturing. We need the same kind of standards in our software application development industry. And we need to empower the companies to take control of all their data and allow them to do a much better job with intelligent software agents, AI as we are calling them today, ChatGPT and other areas. But we can't do that without high quality data and without integrated data. The approach we're advocating leads you to that direction where you are going to be a super company if you can leapfrog the current ERP restrictions of the major vendors out there. That's what we're advocating, a better approach, a better set of generally accepted data management principles, a better approach towards mass production of application systems on time and below budget.
Well, thank you both for coming in. You both have remarkable contributions over lifetimes, decades to the industry, both regionally, nationally, and internationally. And your insights are always so valuable to our audience. So thank you again for coming in.
Well, and thank you for taking the time to to hear our story. We're very appreciative of getting this interview with you, and you've had some really very good questions that I'm sure much of your audience will have as well. So, but thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.